So you might think I'm crazy when I say that Intel stock offers one of the best opportunities in the semiconductor space in terms of investing. And maybe you're right, maybe I'm crazy, but I think, there are some early signs that point to the fact that we are possibly seeing a kind of recovery of a stock, the likes that we haven't seen in 8 years. And 8 years ago, we saw AMD kind of go from the essentially like single digit, I think like 1.8 US dollar at one time, where you could see discussions about the company going bankrupt to today being at, I don't know, like 200, 300 US billion dollar. So Intel, I think, is possibly going same kind of route. Obviously not from the same kind of market cap. AMD was at just 2 or 3 billion US dollar. Intel is right now at 100. But I think this is a company that has a potential of over 1 trillion US dollar. In fact, multiple trillions if everything goes well. Remember, TSMC is at 1 trillion US dollar. Nvidia is at 3 trillion. And then you have a bunch of companies like Qualcomm, AMD that are in the design space. They are designing some other more optimized for mobile, like Qualcomm with their Snapdragon in your phones, and recently somewhat in laptops, whereas AMD more like, in the laptops, but also, in the servers. And then obviously Nvidia doesn't manufacture anything. All of them mostly go through TSMC's manufacturing. And Intel is essentially all of those three companies in one single company. So the potential is definitely there if they execute. And speaking of executing and a path to 1 trillion US dollar, is it possible? Well, I think most signs point to the fact that we are at least at the first level of, maybe, let's say, the bottoming of the stock. Because if you see here, Intel is right now, they just launched their, for example, Granite Rapids, and previous to that 3-4 months ago, Sierra Forest. These are for the general purpose CPUs in the server market, so not the consumer market. And although they struggled in 22 and 23 against AMD, they had, a core deficiency. So if AMD, for example, in 2022 had, I don't know, some 64 or 96 cores, Intel had like 20 or 40 cores at best. And sure, not each core is equal, but again, if you have a 2 times more cores on essentially a better node that AMD had on a TSMC 5nm compared to Intel 10, yeah, things didn't look great. It kind of got a bit better in 23, with the difference being slightly smaller, but still huge distance, and AMD was the clear leader, and this is why we've seen AMD take market share in the server space. But then in 24, as AMD, before they are launching Zen 5 based EPYC CPUs called Turing Dense, they just yesterday launched Granite Rapids, and these are the headlines for Granite Rapids. We can see here, for example, on the Serve the Home, welcome back Intel Xenon 6900P. Intel reasserts their server leadership, right? So this is something that we never could see in 2022, 2023, or even a couple of years before that. So all of a sudden, what? Intel reasserts their server leadership over AMD that has been like a behemoth and like executing on, generation after generation since 2016. So these are, some good signs. And why is Intel Xeon 6 series so great? Well, it kind of goes back to their, their manufacturing side, which they are competing with TSMC. So looking here, you can see that Intel 4, which launched in December of last year with Meteor Lake. Meteor Lake was a laptop CPU kind of thing, or APU. And that was their first EUV node. So EUV is the extreme ultraviolet lithography, which they kind of buy these machines for hundreds of millions of US dollar from the Dutch company ASML. And they kind of, I think Intel made a mistake that they didn't use EUV earlier than compared to, let's say, TSMC. And that is part of the reason why TSMC had a huge lead over the past decade. And now when we are, entering the second generation EUV machines, the high-end EUV from ASML, it looks like Intel actually are now first out of the gate with those machines. Can it be part of the reason why they are ahead of TSMC on the 18A? Because TSMC kind of arguing that, those machines are so expensive. So they're trying to play a bit of, tough game against ASML. But for Intel's case, I think this looks great because, again, we mentioned Intel 4 was the first EUV node. Intel 4 was good, it wasn't bad, but I don't think it was as good as the equivalent of, TSMC kind of. And Intel 3 seems to be really good, It's still not better than the best that TSMC has, but they are getting close. And in some areas, I could say they are slightly better. Most areas, TSMC has a lead. Remember, these nodes are, some are optimized for high performance computing, which you need high, let's say, high clock speed and all those kind of things. Then you have, the mobile optimized nodes. So it's not always, apples to apples. And Intel obviously is more focused on larger chips, whereas TSMC is focused on smaller chips due to their, exposure to the smartphone kind of industry, with your Xiaomi's, your iPhones, your Samsungs, or whatever it is, or whatever it was, Sony or even LG and so on. So yeah, I think it's not apples to apples, but Intel 3 definitely looks good. So and the next big thing is obviously Intel 18A. Intel 18A, which they will also include the industry first backside power delivery and gate all around, which Intel calls ribbon FET. These are essentially advanced engineering tools that they added to the transistor, and it will help, with the performance, with the efficiency, with the power draw, and all those kind of things in the transistor and in the chip. And they are the first on the market, and not only with one of them, some of the companies are introducing, let's say, backside power delivery on one node, and then next year maybe introducing gate all around, like Samsung or so. But no, Intel is going all in one with 18A, I think, and it's gonna, first signs looks great. I think the first 18A product is gonna be Panther Lake, the successor to the Lunar Lake that just got launched this week. Lunar Lake, which is more into the consumer space. Remember, Lunar Lake is more for the consumer mobile laptop space, especially on the side of, thin and light laptops, with extreme good battery life and extreme good gaming performance in the graphics segment. Very good single core CPU performance, but not we have to be honest that AMD is well ahead of Lunar Lake in the Strix point with the multi-core performance. But Intel is, I think, for the first time better than AMD, at least on that segment, in the GPU part of the APU. So, they are very competitive, and although they are doing it with TSMC node, because remember, Intel Lunar Lake is on actual, they outsourced it to TSMC, but the next generation, which will be based on Intel 18A, Panther Lake, coming, maybe next year, I think early next year, that's gonna be internal Intel 18A. So that's going to be really interesting to see, and I think that's going to spill the beans on how this comeback is going. But anyways, I think I still believe, the signs are there, it could be worse, but things are, also it could be better. But I think, Intel 3 looked great. Intel 4 looked okay. Intel 18A seems to be on time. They're going to launch Panther Lake. They're going to launch the second generation Forest server lineup. You can see that Sierra Forest is based for, I think, 144 cores. The smaller E-cores, whereas the lineup that launched yesterday, Granite Rapids, also based on Intel 3, is based on the P-core. So Redwood Cove P-core, the bigger core. So you get bigger core but fewer cores compared to the other one that has more cores but smaller cores. And it's optimized for different workloads, obviously. And you can see that, those are competitive. But next year we will see also Diamond Rapids and Clearwater Forest on, Intel 18A. And that's gonna be really interesting to see how they fight off AMD's Turin and also the up and coming, let's say, Venice, which is Zen 6. I think launching maybe late 25 or early 26. But I think, there's room for both companies to thrive. I don't think this is essentially not bad news. It's for AMD. I think it's just, Intel maybe starting from next year to get some precious, let's say, margins on their sales. And I'm not arguing from the point that this is the bottom. Remember, it's very difficult to know when the bottom is in. And in my opinion, Intel has a potential to be a $1 trillion company. I don't think they're gonna go in bankruptcy, by no means at all. I think this is exaggerated. This is a company that's going through a really difficult spell. But it seems like the bets that Pat Gelsinger actually put on, it seems to be kind of working. So I think Intel, is gonna be a $1 trillion US company in 10 years from now. It's at least good odds for that. And due to that, I think, this company, if 18A is promising, you could start to see this market cap to go to, I don't know, 180, 200 or even $300 billion, which would give you a share price at 2 or 3x from now, maybe in 2 years from now. And I think that's a good risk reward. again, I'm not saying that the company will go to $1 trillion in 1 year. That's not what I'm saying. But you know, if the processing side of Intel's manufacturing threatens Taiwan Semiconductor, they start to get external companies to actually use their foundry business, which that's the goal of the company essentially, then why not? You know, if they have basically equally as good as nodes as TSMC has, maybe not the same capability in terms of size and volume, because TSMC has so many customers over the past 10 years, so they are a huge company with many fabs, but Intel maybe will attack them on the, you know, highest end. And if they do that, maybe we start to see this company's market cap to go up a bit soon, maybe in 6 months or 1 year, difficult to say. But again, this is not investment advice. I'm just, you know, sharing my thoughts. I think that Intel is, you know, even for example in the AI GPU space, sure, they are well ahead behind Nvidia and even AMD. But you know, they're out there, you know, they're doing stuff. It's kind of getting somewhat of attraction. So it could be worse. And that's, you know, that's my few cents. Please follow me. I will definitely follow this Intel idea. And again, I'm very positive on AMD. You know, I've been a bull on AMD since 2016. I still am. And yeah, so that's not, you know, talking bad about AMD. But anyways, thanks you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.